On this Wednesday night, hockey and head health, the potential medical penalty of a lengthy career and repeated concussions.
We can prevent this problem.
Manhunt. The search for the gunman who police say murdered the CEO of one of America's largest insurance providers. Shaking off criticism, why this federal cabinet minister is defending going to a Taylor Swift concert on the taxpayer's dime. Plus, the Axeman.
That's a scoring and chopping one.
This Canadian's critical contribution to restoring the Notre Dame Cathedral.
Global National with Donna Friesen. Reporting tonight, Nitu Garcha.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. We begin tonight with an alarming new link between competitive hockey and a degenerative brain disease. Researchers in the U.S. found the longer people played, the greater the chance of developing CTE, which can lead to dementia and death. The study found the vast majority of professional players have signs of the disease. Heidi Petracek walks us through the results and what it could mean for those who play.
Hockey is a contact sport.
That's going to be a penalty.
A new study has found those hits do take a toll on players and their brains. Researchers at Boston University examined the brains of 77 deceased male ice hockey players who played in everything from youth to professional leagues. Before death, they had suffered the symptoms of chronic traumatic encephalopathy, a brain disorder likely caused by repeated head injuries. CTE only diagnosable by autopsy.
What's most striking about this study is the high rate of CTE among the professional ice hockey players.
They found almost all the professional hockey players, 96%, had CTE. And the longer players were in the sport, the greater the odds of brain injury. CTE found in 19% of those who played less than 13 years, in more than half of those who played between 13 to 23 years, and in more than 95% of players who played the game for 23 years or more.
2 concussions in a year, couldn't even go to school for like 3-4 months.
18-year-old Ryan Yankovic had big hockey dreams until he suffered 2 concussions by the time he was 15 years old, and he still feels the effects.
I have noticed a couple things after my 2 concussions. I'm a lot more sensitive to light. I never used to kind of get like headaches or migraines with light, but now I do after that.
And he switched to baseball.
Well, if you're a current hockey player, this is a very clear message that you want to avoid head impacts as much as you can.
Nova Scotia native and NHL superstar Sidney Crosby put a spotlight on concussions in the sport when he took time off early in his career to recover from the blows he took on the ice. But the head of the league, Gary Bettman, has repeatedly denied hockey can lead to CTE.
Time for the NHL to stop this facade that the hockey does not cause CTE. You know, the NFL has admitted football causes CTE, and that has unlocked the door to a much safer game.
Dr. Chris Nowinski says the NHL could do the same. He says CTE is something all those in the sport need to think hard about. Heidi Petracek, Global News, Halifax.
One of the most powerful voices in U.S. healthcare has been silenced in a brazen display of violence. The CEO of a major health insurer in the country was shot dead on a busy New York street early this morning. Police believe it was a targeted attack, but as Eric Sorensen tells us, the motive remains a mystery.
It is a chilling moment. Brian Thompson walking to the Hilton Hotel in downtown Manhattan when a gunman appears and shoots him from behind. Police say it was not a random attack.
Many people passed the suspect, but he appeared to wait for his intended target.
He ignores numerous other pedestrians, approaches the victim from behind, and shoots him in the back. The shooter then walks toward the victim and continues to shoot.
Police say the gunman escaped down an alley and fled on a city e-bike. Police could track its GPS, but it was ditched in Central Park nearby. Police swept into the area looking for witnesses and evidence.
I hear the shot, and when I look at the guy was a gun, like the silent gun, got like a black gun, and I saw him after he shot him. He ran across the street this way.
Thompson, the victim, was the CEO of UnitedHealthcare, the largest private health insurance company in the United States, based in Minnesota. He was walking to an investor meeting at the Hilton. Police are looking not just for the suspect, but a motive. Thompson reportedly received threats recently over a lack of health coverage.
We're reaching out to law enforcement in Minnesota, and we're also interviewing his co-workers and family members to see if there have been any specific threats against him in the past.
It can be easy to disappear in Manhattan, say experts, but it's also hard to stay hidden.
I'm confident that there's probably tons of video surveillance before the suspect arrived there, how he left, where he exited, and they're gonna carefully track down his path of escape.
While a gunman is on the loose, the annual tree lighting will go ahead tonight.
This is a terrible event, but we're going to go on.
Police say they will have a huge ground presence at the tree lighting and have told New Yorkers it's safe to go. Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
In downtown Vancouver, 2 people were injured and a suspect shot and killed by police after a stabbing just before noon. A bystander filmed the chaos and a warning the video is disturbing.
Move over! Take out! Move over!
Police can be seen aiming their guns over the counter of a convenience store and firing at least 10 times. Investigators say they located a suspect after reports a man stole alcohol and was armed with a knife inside a restaurant. The suspect died in hospital. Global News has learned Canada's Auditor General will investigate Ottawa's Indigenous procurement system. The audit by Auditor General Karen Hogan's office comes on the heels of a Global News investigation revealing concerns about companies fraudulently claiming Indigenous ownership and lax oversight of the program intended to benefit First Nations, Inuit and Métis companies. Hogan's office hasn't confirmed the audit, but sources say the Auditor General has notified Algonquin Nation of its intention to launch the probe next year. And child welfare was part of today's agenda at the Assembly of First Nations Special Chiefs Assembly in Ottawa. 9 resolutions are dedicated to reforming the First Nations Child and Family Services program. In October, chiefs voted down a federal deal worth nearly $48 billion. At that assembly, they passed resolutions calling for a new negotiation and legal team to help bring more transparency to the deal. The political fate of South Korean President Yoon Suk Yeol is in doubt as calls grow for him to resign following his brief declaration of martial law on Tuesday. Opposition parties began the process of impeaching the president today, less than a day after he delivered the shocking declaration in a televised address, triggering a political crisis. Redmond Shannon reports on the growing fallout in the East Asian nation.
Chants of anger on a day of relative calm in South Korea. With vigils in Seoul and the country's largest labour union launching a nationwide workers' strike, calling for President Yoon Suk Yeol to step down before he is impeached. The president's declaration of martial law reversed democracy, says this woman. Her sign calls on him to quit. More remarkable footage shows the events during Yoon's short-lived declaration of martial law. This, the leader of the opposition evading soldiers and scaling a fence into Parliament to cast a vote demanding the president reverse the decree. And this, now a symbol of the country's political crisis. An opposition spokesperson grabbing a soldier's gun barrel. The soldier doesn't engage.
It speaks well to the health of South Korea's democracy that not only the National Assembly, but the people, as soon as they heard about what was going on, they came out into the public, into the streets, in front of the National Assembly.
Yoon's defense minister and some aides have offered resignations following the debacle. Divisive and prone to gaffes, Yoon has been struggling to rule with a parliamentary minority. Plagued by controversy, his wife also faced accusations of taking luxury gifts and manipulating stocks. Yoon's martial law call, the first since South Korea became a full democracy in the 80s.
Did he have something bigger in mind, or was this a not fully thought out attempt? I think there is a lot of uncertainty and a lot of fear because democracy is such a closely held value because of how much Korea fought for it.
A two-thirds majority will be needed at the National Assembly by Saturday to impeach Yoon. The president would then be suspended before a constitutional court considers whether he should be removed from office permanently. Neetu?
Redmond Shannon in London. Thanks, Redmond. For the first time in more than 60 years, lawmakers in France have brought down the government with a no-confidence motion. On Monday, Prime Minister Michel Barnier attempted to ram through part of his government's annual budget. France is struggling to deal with high debt and a widening deficit. Now, as Taria Isri reports, France is left with a caretaker government to deal with both an economic and political crisis.
Pour l'adoption, 331. 331 votes in favor. And with that, France is thrown into fresh political crisis. French Prime Minister Michel Barnier ousted after just 3 months.
Cela restera pour moi.
His term is historically short. It was an honor to serve France with dignity, he says. Today was brought on by French President Emmanuel Macron's apparent miscalculation to call snap elections last spring. His opponents on both the political left and right rejected a centrist vision for France and the government's proposed austerity budget that included 60 billion euros in cuts and tax hikes to lower France's colossal debt.
Ce budget ne s'attaque pas seulement à la France, il prend en otage les Français.
The budget doesn't just attack France, says leader of the far-right National Rally Party Marine Le Pen. It takes French people hostage. The vote does not mean the end for Macron, but will threaten his political future and the stability of another European power. Germany already faces a pivotal election in February after the collapse of its governing coalition.
What we are seeing in both countries are really fundamental transformations to the party system, primarily triggered by the emergence of the far right as a very significant block of power.
Another potential challenge, the return of Donald Trump. European governments are also concerned about trade tariffs. The U.S. president-elect will travel to Paris this weekend after he was invited by Macron for the reopening of Notre Dame. It will mark Trump's first foreign trip since winning the election. Taria Isri, Global News, Montreal.
Air Canada is making a major change to its bag policy in the new year. Starting January 3rd, passengers flying on a basic fare within North America and to several sun destinations will have to pay a fee to bring carry-on luggage on board. Purses, laptops, strollers, and mobility aids will remain free of charge. Basic fare passengers will also have to pay a fee for changing their seat starting January 21st. Federal Transport Minister Anita Anand says she's extremely concerned about these changes and will summon all Canadian airline CEOs for a meeting this month. Swift backlash coming up. How a federal cabinet minister is being slammed for how he got his tickets to a Taylor Swift concert. In Pennsylvania, a desperate search is underway for a missing woman believed to be lost in a sinkhole. Crews suspect the 64-year-old fell down the 9-meter hole Monday night while looking for her cat. Heavy equipment, audio devices, and thermal cameras are being used in the search. The hole is above an old, crumbling coal mine, and it's becoming increasingly unstable. Taylor Swift fans shut out of the Eras Tour are having to shell out thousands of dollars for any chance at a ticket. So tonight, eyebrows are being raised at how a federal cabinet minister snagged access. Harjit Sajjan accepted taxpayer-funded tickets for himself and his daughter to attend Taylor Swift's closing weekend in Vancouver. Mackenzie Gray explains how Sajjan is defending his decision.
Seeing Taylor Swift in Vancouver would be a life-changing experience for thousands of Canadians.
All the Swifties are part of the reason why I'm going to Vancouver.
Somi Cheon, so dedicated, she's flying in from Saskatchewan and getting a hotel room even without a ticket.
Do you want to know what the secret is to getting tickets? There is no secret. It's luck.
Luck Vancouver Cabinet Minister Harjit Sajjan didn't need. He got box seats as a gift from taxpayers, even though he already had Taylor Swift tickets.
We already had 4 tickets before, which we didn't end up going to in Toronto, and we sold those at cost to other friends.
Sajjan's office says he got 2 tickets from Pavco, the Crown corporation that operates the stadium where Swift is playing her 3 sold-out Vancouver shows. In exchange, Sajjan donated $1,500 to the Vancouver Food Bank.
It was actually raising money for the food bank, something that I do every single year.
The ethics commissioner did clear the move, saying Sajjan's donation was approximate market value for the seats. In April, the federal government gave Vancouver $116 million, in part to Pavco, to upgrade BC Place ahead of the FIFA 2026 World Cup. The Conservatives say it was a clear conflict for the Minister of Pacific Economic Development to be hosted by the stadium's owners.
It's absolutely inappropriate for the minister to accept a free gift.
Vancouver Mayor Ken Sim turned down Pavco's similar offer, buying his own Swift tickets. But Sajjan did say there was one drawback, Neithu. The Vancouver seats he was gifted are worse compared to the Toronto tickets he sold.
All right, Mackenzie Gray in Ottawa. Thanks, Mackenzie. Fighting for transgender rights ahead, the proposed changes sparking outrage on both sides of the border. A series of bills affecting transgender Albertans have passed the final stage of debate in the legislature and are now set to become law. The changes include requiring parental consent for name or pronoun changes at school, prohibiting doctors from providing transgender treatments to kids, and banning transgender athletes from competing in leagues not designated as co-ed. The bills are expected to become law in the new year. However, advocates have vowed to challenge the legislation in court. In the U.S., the divisive issue has made its way to the Supreme Court, where for the first time today, the High Court considered whether states can ban certain gender transition medical treatments for young people. The case centers around 3 transgender teens in Tennessee. But as Bianca Fascini explains, the Supreme Court's ruling on the matter could have implications right across the country.
A mass of flags and banners, and hundreds gathered in front of the U.S. Supreme Court, making their views on a divisive issue known.
I think the fact that people are using trans rights as a political weapon is not only life-endangering, but it's despicable.
The court heard arguments Wednesday over the legality of a Tennessee law banning gender-affirming care for transgender minors. At the heart of the case, brought on by the Biden administration, is whether it violates the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment.
All 50 states.
Critics say ruling in favor of the ban ignores what trans kids, their parents, and experts say is crucial health care.
Parents, medical providers, mental health providers, behavioral health providers, everybody is saying, what are you doing? These state legislators are going, I know better than all of them.
But the medical community is not aligned on the issue. Dr. Roy Epin, an endocrinologist from Montreal, says he no longer works with trans patients.
I think we need to do better psychological care of these patients, many of whom have other issues besides the trans issue.
Supporters of the bill also argue that an age limit is a reasonable request.
You can't smoke at 16. You have to get permission slips to see a movie and for field trips in schools. So why are we allowing this to happen?
The decision isn't expected for several months, but it could affect similar laws enacted in 25 other states, as well as other legislation regarding trans issues, like policies on sports participation.
Now, it's unclear how the court is going to rule, but it does have a 6-3 conservative majority with 3 Trump appointees. And Trump did make transgender issues a big part of his 2024 campaign. Bianca Fascini, Global News, Washington.
Forged in fire. Next, how this Quebec man helped restore Notre Dame Cathedral.
Johnny's wife, Meredith, and their children, Noah and Johnny Jr.
Family members of Johnny and Matthew Goudreau joined thousands of fans for an emotional tribute at the Saddle Dome last night. It was their first trip back to Calgary and the first home game between the Flames and the Blue Jackets since the Goudreau brothers were killed by a suspected drunk driver in August. Johnny played for Calgary for 8 seasons before signing with Columbus. He was a beloved member of both teams. Many dignitaries will be in Paris this weekend for the reopening of Notre Dame Cathedral 5 years after it was nearly destroyed by fire. The billion-dollar reconstruction project attracted craftspeople from around the world, including from Canada. Mike Armstrong has one of their stories.
There was only ever one thing, even as a boy, Mathieu Colette ever wanted to do. This. He studied to be a blacksmith, became a master, and has now taught for years. What he never saw coming was a call from a former student in France 2 years ago, asking him for help with a secret project.
Well, you don't believe it? I don't think I believe it still.
Colette was shaken by the 2019 fire that almost destroyed Notre Dame de Paris. He calls it one of his wonders of the world, a masterpiece right down to the hinges on the doors, forged centuries ago by another master blacksmith, working apparently under an impossible deadline.
There's a legend that he made a deal with the devils to do so. So it's packed of history, of culture, of heritage.
Well, that secret project Colette was called about was part of the reconstruction. As much as possible, teams used the materials, the techniques, and the tools that were used originally. Colette was brought in to help with the making of 2 types of medieval axes.
That's a finishing tools, and that's a scoring and chopping one.
Now, there were modern tools used, but not where it would affect what went back into Notre Dame de Paris.
That's gonna leave a shaving mark, and that shaving mark need to be the same when you replace a part on a cultural heritage building.
Colette made 3 trips to France to help with axes. The deadline was, again, tight. 60 axes were made and were used as quickly as they were done.
One is finished, the carpenter needed it. It was that fast.
Colette will be watching this weekend for the public reopening of the cathedral. He says he's proud he helped a building that's been around for 800 years stick around for another 800 or more. Mike Armstrong, Global News, Montreal.
And we will be in Paris for the public reopening this weekend. That is Global National for this Wednesday night. I'm Neetu Garcha. Tonight's Your Canada is Yellow Lake near Caledon, British Columbia. Thanks so much for watching. Donna will be back with you tomorrow. Have a great night.